had seen civilizations die. In his 400 years of life, he had watched 17 species fall to conquest, disease, or their own foolishness. He had recorded their final moments with the cold precision his people were known for. They were perfect witnesses. They remembered everything. They felt what others felt, and they never took sides. This was why the Galactic Concordat had chosen him for this assignment. The message had arrived 3 days ago. The Dominion, the most brutal empire in known space, had declared war on the Terran Confederation. The humans, that young species that had stumbled into the galaxy only 2 centuries ago. The Concordat wanted everything documented. They wanted a record of what would certainly be humanity's extinction. Had accepted without emotion. This was his purpose. This was what did. Now his ship dropped through the clouds of New Thermopylae, a frozen moon at the edge of human space. 3 million human soldiers were gathering here. 3 million souls preparing to face an enemy that had never lost a war. The shuttle landed on a pad covered in ice, pulled his thermal cloak and stepped outside. The cold hit him like a physical force. His breath turned to fog instantly. Around him, the human staging base stretched for kilometers in every direction. Ships, weapons, vehicles, and everywhere humans. His escort was waiting. A tall Concordat official named Al, who had worked with humans before. "Welcome to New Thermopylae," Al said. The humans named it after an ancient battle on there, a place where a small force held against an impossible enemy. Found this interesting. They chose to name their staging ground after a battle, not a victory. Al made a sound that might have been a laugh. The soldiers at Thermopylae all died, every single one. The humans consider it one of their greatest moments. This made no sense, too. He filed the information away and followed his escort into the base. What he saw confused him. He had witnessed armies prepare for war before. The crystalline hegemony had moved in perfect, silent formation. They had meditated in isolation, preparing their minds for death. They themselves gathered in organized swarms, clicking and hissing their battle codes. The humans did none of these things. They were laughing. Everywhere looked, humans were talking, joking, sharing food. Some played games with small balls or cards. Others sat in groups, telling stories. Many were embracing, holding each other tight. Some were crying openly, tears running down their faces while their companions held them. Stopped walking. His perception organs, the sensory clusters that let feel the emotions of others, were picking up something overwhelming. The air itself seemed thick with feeling. Joy, fear, love, sadness, determination, all mixed together in a storm of sensation. "What is this?" he asked. "Why are they behaving this way?" Al watched the humans with an expression could not read. They are preparing for war. This is not preparation. This is chaos, emotion. They should be organizing, planning, conserving their strength. They are doing all of those things, Al said quietly. They are just doing them in a human way. A group of soldiers walked past. One of them, a young female with dark skin and close-cut hair, was carrying a smaller male on her shoulders. They were both laughing. The small male reached up and caught a snowflake in his hand. "I have studied said. They are efficient, ruthless. They have conquered 17 civilizations. These humans, they act like children. How can they possibly survive?" Al was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was strange, careful. "I have been a Concordat observer for 200 years. I have seen many species face the logical ones, the efficient ones, the ones who prepared with cold precision. Do you know what they all had in common?" "What?" "They all lost, every single one." Al turned to face him directly. His eyes were serious. "I do not know if humans will survive this war. The mathematics say they will not. But I have worked with them for 30 years and I have learned one thing. Do not mistake their warmth for weakness. Do not mistake their tears for fear. These creatures are not like us. They are not like anything the galaxy has ever seen. watched a human male kneeling in the snow, making a small figure out of ice. Another human took a picture of him, and they both smiled. "What are they then?" he asked. Al did not answer immediately. He watched the humans moving around them, these strange beings who laughed and cried and held each other on the eve of their possible extinction. "I do not know," he finally said, "but I know this. They have never faced anything like them. No one has, and I am no longer certain that the mathematics mean anything at all." That night walked through the human camp alone. His recording implants captured everything. The sounds of music from 100 different sources, the smell of food cooking, the sight of humans gathered around fires, talking in low voices. He passed a tent where a human was reading from a small book to a group of others. The words were in a language did not know, but the emotion behind them was clear. Hope, defiance, a refusal to accept the darkness. He passed another tent where a human female was singing to herself, a soft and sad song. Tears ran down her face, but she did not stop singing. He passed a group of soldiers checking their weapons. They were focused, professional, efficient, but even they stopped to share a joke, to clap each other on the back, to smile. Had documented the fall of civilizations. He knew what species looked like when they were about to die. They were quiet, resigned, broken. These humans were none of those things. They were alive, burning with something he could not name, something that filled the frozen air and made his perception organs ache. He did not understand. He had come here to document an extinction. But as he walked through the camp, surrounded by laughter and tears and song, began to wonder if he had been sent to witness something else entirely. The next morning requested permission to move freely among the human forces. The request was granted immediately. The humans, it seemed, had nothing to hide. He spent the day walking through the massive camp, observing, recording, trying to understand. His perception organs worked constantly, drinking in the emotions around him. It was exhausting. Humans felt everything so strongly. Where I might feel a gentle wave of emotion, humans felt a storm. In the afternoon, he met Sergeant. She was sitting on a supply crate outside a barracks building, cleaning her weapon. She was small for a human, with dark hair tied back and tired eyes. When approached, she looked up and smiled. "You are the observer," she said. "I heard about you, come to watch us die." Did not know how to respond. The question was direct in a way that made him uncomfortable. "I am here to document," he said carefully. Laughed. It was not a cruel sound. "Document, that is a nice word for it." She moved over on the crate, making room. "Sit, I do not bite." Sat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Continued cleaning her weapon with practiced movements. "You are afraid," said finally. It was not a question. His perception organs could feel her fear clearly. It was a cold thing sitting in her chest. Did not deny it. "Yes, I am afraid. I have been afraid for 3 days. I will be afraid tomorrow when the launch. I will be afraid when we hit the ground. I will probably be afraid when I die." "Then why do you fight?" Stopped cleaning. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. A hologram appeared above it. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, with the same dark hair as. She was laughing, reaching for something outside the frame. "Her name is Sophia," said. "She is with my mother on Earth. She does not know what is happening. She thinks I am just away for work." She stared at the image for a long moment. "They do not take prisoners. They do not negotiate. They do not stop. If we lose this war, they will reach Earth in 18 months. My little girl will be dead before her 6th birthday." She turned off the hologram and put it back in her jacket. "So yes, I am afraid. I am terrified. I wake up in the night shaking, but I will get on that tomorrow. I will fight until I cannot fight anymore. And maybe if enough of us fight hard enough, Sophia will grow up free." She smiled, and there were tears in her eyes. "That is enough. That is more than enough." Did not know what to say. He had documented species fighting for survival before, but they fought with cold logic, with calculated necessity. This was different. This was fire. That evening, Al found him and told him about the vigil. It is a human tradition, Al explained. The night before a great battle they gather. They have done this for thousands of years. I think you should see it. The vigil was held in a massive open area at the center of the camp. When arrived, he stopped and stared. There were hundreds of thousands of humans gathered there, maybe more. They stood in the cold, their breath making clouds of fog, their faces lit by floating lights. And they were singing. Had heard music before. Every species had some form of it, but this was different. This was not one song. It was many songs rising and falling, weaving together. Some were loud and fierce. Some were soft and sad. Some were in languages he did not understand, but they all meant the same thing. We are here, we are together, we are not afraid to feel. His perception organs overloaded. The emotion hit him like a physical wave. Love, fear, hope, grief, rage, determination. 100,000 hearts all feeling at once, all connected by the music. It was too much, far too much. Stumbled backward, his hands pressed to his perception organs. He could not breathe. He could not think. The intensity was overwhelming. He fled. He found himself outside the gathering area, leaning against a cold metal wall, his whole body shaking. He had never experienced anything like that. In 400 years of witnessing, nothing had prepared him for the sheer force of human emotion. Rough night. Looked up. An old human male was standing nearby. He had gray hair and a lined face, and he wore the insignia of a general. He was holding 2 cups of something hot. Yes, managed. The general walked over and offered one of the cups. Water, hot, thought you might need it. Took the cup with trembling hands. The warmth felt good. Thank you. The general leaned against the wall beside him. From here, they could still hear the singing, but it was distant, manageable. Gets to you, does it not? The general said. The singing. I have been a soldier for 40 years, and it still gets to me every time. Why do you do it? Asked. Why do you feel so much? Other species prepare for war with meditation, with silence, with focus. You do this chaos of emotion. Why? The general was quiet for a moment. He looked up at the stars, visible between the clouds. Because we are afraid, he said simply. Because we love. Because tomorrow some of us will not be able to sing anymore. So we sing tonight. We cry tonight. We hold each other tonight. He looked at. We have always done this, since before we left our first world. The night before battle, we remind ourselves what we are fighting for. And what is that? The general smiled. It was a tired smile, full of sadness and strength. Each other. He finished his drink and stood up straight. Get some rest, observer. Tomorrow you will see what happens when humans stop singing and start fighting. It is something else entirely. He walked away into the darkness, leaving alone with the distant sound of 100,000 voices, rising together into the frozen night. Stayed there for a long time, listening, feeling, trying to understand. He had come to document an extinction. He was beginning to think he was witnessing something else, something the galaxy had never seen before. Something that burned. Dawn came to New Thermopylae like a wound opening in the sky. Red and gold light spread across the frozen landscape, turning the ice into fire. The temperature was negative 40 degrees. The wind cut like a knife. Stood on an observation platform high above the camp. From here, he could see everything. The field stretched to the horizon, hundreds of massive vessels waiting to carry soldiers to war. And between the platform and the ships, the human army was forming. 3 million soldiers, 3 million humans in armor that gleamed with frost. They moved through the frozen dawn, finding their units, taking their places. The sound of boots on ice filled the air like distant thunder. Al stood beside, silent. His face was pale. I have observed many armies, Al said quietly. The war swarms, the crystalline hegemony in their billions. I thought I understood what war looked like." He did not finish the sentence. Below them, the humans continued to gather. They moved with discipline and purpose. Officers shouted commands. Soldiers checked their weapons one final time. Medical teams moved through the ranks, ready for what was to come. And then, without any signal that could see, the army began to move. 3 million humans stepped forward as one. The sound was incredible. Not just the thunder of boots on frozen ground, but something deeper, a vibration that felt in his bones. The whole moon seemed to shake with their movement. They marched in perfect formation, row after row after row, a river of humanity flowing toward war, toward death. And then they began to sing. It started somewhere in the middle of the formation, a single voice, strong and clear, rising above the thunder of boots. Other voices joined it, then more, then more. Within moments, 3 million humans were singing together. This was not like the vigil that had been soft, mournful. This was different. This was thunder given voice. The song was in a human language did not know, but he did not need to know the words. The meaning was clear in every note, in every voice, in every step that shook the frozen ground. We will not run, we will not hide, we will not break, we will hold the line, we will die on our feet before we live on our knees. Perception organs screamed with the intensity of it. 3 million humans all feeling the same thing at the same moment. Fear transformed into fury. Love transformed into strength. Despair transformed into defiance. He gripped the railing of the platform, his whole body shaking. "What is this?" he whispered. "What am I feeling?" Al did not answer. He was staring at the army below with an expression had never seen on him before, something like awe, something like fear. The humans kept marching, kept singing. The sun rose higher and the ice around them turned to gold and fire. They looked like gods, like demons, like something from a dream that could not possibly be real. Searched for Sargent in the crowd. He could not find her. She was just one face among millions, one voice among millions, one heart among millions. But she was there. They were all there. Every human who had laughed and cried and held each other the night before. Every human who had shown him pictures of children and told him about fear and love and hope. They were all marching, all singing, all burning with that fire he still could not name. A Concordat vessel flew overhead, carrying other observers to their positions. One of them, a being from a species did not recognize, looked down at the marching army. Even from this distance, could see the terror on their face. "I begin to understand," Al said. His voice was strange, hollow. "I begin to understand why the old species whisper about humans, why they tell their children stories about the creatures from the third planet of Sol." "What do you understand?" Al turned to look at him. His eyes were wide. "Every being in that army chose to be there. Do you understand what that means? The fight because they are bred for conquest. It is in their blood. They cannot do anything else. But humans," he looked back at the marching army, "humans choose. Every single one of them woke up this morning and chose to march toward death. They could have run. They could have hidden. They could have surrendered. But they chose this." The song changed. A new melody rose from the ranks, faster, fiercer. The boots struck the ground harder. The army moved like a single creature, a beast of metal and flesh and fire. "That is what makes them terrifying," Al continued. "Not their weapons, not their ships, not their numbers, their choice. They choose to fight when logic says they should surrender. They choose to die when reason says they should run. They choose to burn when wisdom says they should go quietly into the darkness." Finally found the word he had been searching for, the name for what burned in these creatures. Defiance. Not the cold defiance of logic, not the calculated defiance of necessity. This was hot, raw, and utterly irrational. This was the defiance of beings who looked at the impossible and refused to accept it, who looked at death and refused to go quietly, who looked at the darkness and lit themselves on fire just to push it back. The army reached the singing did not stop. Soldiers loaded into the vessels, row after row, still lifting their voices together. The doors began to close. The engines began to fire. One by one, they rose into the sky, hundreds of them, then thousands. They climbed through the atmosphere, carrying 3 million humans toward the war, toward the Dominion, toward whatever waited for them in the darkness between stars. From the ground, could still hear them singing. He stood on the platform long after the last ship had disappeared. The sun was fully up now, and the frozen moon was quiet again, empty. The only sound was the wind. He thought about, somewhere in that fleet, holding a hologram of her daughter close to her heart. He thought about the old general who had given him hot water and talked about why humans sing. He thought about 3 million voices rising together in the frozen dawn. He thought about defiance, and for the first time in his 400 years of life, felt something he had never felt before. Hope. Irrational, illogical, completely unsupported by the mathematics. But real. Because he had seen humans march to battle, and now he understood why the galaxy whispered about them. Why ancient species told stories about the young creatures from Saul. Why who had never lost a war, were about to face something they had never encountered. Not just an army. A fire that refused to go out. The human fleet arrived at Prime on the 7th day. Watched from a shielded Concordat observation vessel at the edge of the system, his recording implants captured everything. Every ship, every explosion, every moment of what would become the most studied battle in galactic history. They were waiting. Their fleet was massive, 8 times the size of the human force, thousands of warships, dark and angular, covered in weapons. They had conquered 17 civilizations with this fleet. They had never lost a single major engagement. The mathematics were clear. This battle would last hours at most. The humans would be destroyed. The battle lasted 11 days. On the first day, the humans attacked. They did not wait. They did not defend. They drove straight into the heart of the formation, weapons blazing. Ships exploded on both sides. The darkness of space lit up with fire. Watched a human cruiser take heavy damage from 3 vessels. Its hull was breached. Its engines were failing. By all logic, it should have retreated, should have tried to escape. Instead, it accelerated. The cruiser drove directly into the center ship, weapons firing continuously. The 2 vessels exploded together in a ball of fire that destroyed the other 2 ships as well. Stared at his display. They used their own ship as a weapon. Al, standing beside him, did not respond. He was pale. On the 3rd day, the humans landed troops on Prime itself. A planet that had never been touched by enemy forces in 10,000 years of their history. 50,000 human soldiers dropped from the sky and took a beachhead near the planetary capital. They were outnumbered 100 to 1. They held for 6 days. Monitored their communications. He heard commanders giving orders with calm voices while explosions shook their positions. He heard soldiers joking with each other between firefights. He heard a young human, barely more than a child, singing softly while she treated the wounds of her companions. He heard her unit was defending a bridge that controlled access to the landing zone. The threw wave after wave at them. Thousands of the insect-like creatures, clicking and hissing, weapons firing. "Fall back," someone shouted on the communication channel. "We cannot hold this position." No, his voice was steady, calm. "If we fall back, they will reach the evacuation transports. There are wounded soldiers on those transports. Children we rescued from the slave camps. We hold here. We will die here. Then we die here." They held the bridge for 18 hours. When reinforcements finally arrived, there were only 7 of units still standing. She was one of them. In space, the battle continued. The humans were taking terrible losses. Ship after ship was destroyed, but they did not retreat. They did not surrender. Every destroyed vessel seemed to make the others fight harder. On the eighth day, something changed. The communications began to show confusion, uncertainty. For the first time in their history, they were facing an enemy that would not break, an enemy that became more dangerous as the battle turned against them. Intercepted a transmission from a commander to his supreme leader. They do not stop. We destroy their ships and they ram us with the wreckage. We kill their soldiers and the survivors attack us with bare hands. We have killed thousands of them and still they come. What are these creatures? What are we fighting? On the ninth day, the human carrier Unconquered took a direct hit to its reactor core. The ship was dying. Its captain, a woman named Tors, had seconds to make a decision. A dreadnought was moving to intercept a civilian transport filled with refugees, 3,000 beings from species that had enslaved, children, elderly, wounded. Tors positioned her dying ship between the dreadnought and the transport. "All hands abandon ship," she ordered calmly. "This is the captain. It has been an honor serving with you. Now get to the escape pods." Then she locked the helm controls and turned to face the dreadnought. The Unconquered held for 97 minutes, a dying ship, crewed only by its captain, facing the most powerful vessel in the fleet. Tors used every weapon she had. She rammed the dreadnought twice. She vented atmosphere to change her ship's course. She did everything possible and several things that should have been impossible. The refugee transport escaped. Tor's final transmission was picked up by Concordat sensors. "Tell my son I did not run." The Unconquered exploded against the hull of the dreadnought, taking the massive vessel with it. Wept, he did not know when he had started. His species was not supposed to feel this way, but he could not stop. On the 11th day, the fleet retreated. Could not believe his sensors. The still outnumbered the humans 3-1. They still had enough firepower to destroy what remained of the human fleet. By every calculation, they should have won. But they retreated. The final transmission from the Admiral was intercepted by every Concordat vessel in the system. "They do not stop. We kill them and they do not stop. We destroy their ships and they find new ways to kill us. We break their lines and they hold anyway. In 10,000 years we have never faced an enemy like this. We do not know how to fight creatures who do not fear death. We do not know how to defeat an enemy that treats destruction as victory. We are withdrawing. We need to understand what we are fighting, because these humans are not like anything we have ever encountered." The message ended. The fleet jumped out of the system. The battle was over. The human fleet, battered and broken, missing more than half its ships, hung in space above Prime. There was silence on every communication channel. Then slowly, a voice began to sing. Did not know the song, but he recognized the feeling. It was the same thing he had felt on New Thermopylae, the same fire that had burned in 3 million humans as they marched to war. More voices joined in, ship after ship, soldier after soldier. The survivors sang together across the void. They were not singing in triumph. There was no celebration in their voices. Too many had died for that. They were singing for the fallen, for Tors and her Unconquered, for every soldier who had held a line that could not be held, for every human who had marched into the darkness and not come back. They were singing because that was what humans did. Because even in the face of death, even standing in the wreckage of their fleet, even surrounded by the bodies of their friends, they refused to be silent. They refused to stop burning. Listened to their song, and he understood something he had never understood before. He understood why who had conquered 17 civilizations, had retreated from this broken fleet. He understood why ancient species whispered about humans in fear. It was not their weapons, it was not their ships, it was not their technology. It was the fire in their hearts that nothing could extinguish. Not even death. The war lasted 3 more years. stayed to witness all of it. He traveled with human fleets. He walked through battlefields still smoking from combat. He recorded everything with the cold precision his species was known for. But he was no longer cold. The humans had changed him. Their fire had touched something inside him that he had not known existed. He watched them liberate world after world from control. He watched them find the slave camps, the breeding facilities, the places where they had kept other species like animals. He watched human soldiers weep openly at what they found. He watched them carry children from the darkness, children from species they had never seen before, and treat them as their own. On a world called 4, he saw a human marine sit in the rubble of a destroyed city for 3 hours, holding a dying alien child. The child was not human. Its species had no alliance with Earth. There was no strategic reason to care about it. But the Marine held it anyway, sang to it softly, stayed with it until the end. When the child died, the Marine buried it with full honors. He carved a marker from a piece of metal and planted it in the ground. Then he picked up his weapon and went back to fighting. Asked him why. The Marine looked at him with tired eyes. Because someone had to, because every life matters, because if we stop caring about the small things, we lose the reason for fighting at all. This was what humans were. This was what the galaxy did not understand. They did not fight for conquest. They did not fight for power. They fought because they could not stand to see suffering and do nothing. They fought because the fire in their hearts demanded it. He saw them show mercy to prisoners. He saw them build hospitals on conquered worlds. He saw them feed the starving, heal the wounded, comfort the grieving, even their enemies. They did not understand. Their entire civilization was built on the idea that the strong took from the weak, that mercy was foolishness, that compassion was a defect. They could not comprehend a species that would die to protect strangers, that would sacrifice everything for beings they had never met, that would win a war and then extend a hand to help the defeated stand. On the final day of the war, stood in the great hall of the capital, the Supreme Commander, a massive creature covered in battle scars, knelt before the human delegation. The surrender was unconditional. Admiral stepped forward. She was an older woman, small and gray-haired. She had lost her entire family in the war's first days, her husband, her children, her parents, all killed when they destroyed the colony where they lived. Expected anger, vengeance. They certainly expected it. They understood hatred. They understood revenge. It was all they had ever known. Extended her hand to the Supreme Commander. "It is over," she said. Her voice was calm, gentle. "Now we rebuild together if you are willing." The Supreme Commander stared at her hand. In culture, the victor took everything from the defeated: possessions, territory, life itself. That was the way of things. That was how the universe worked. But this human, who had more reason than anyone to want revenge, was offering something else. Peace, partnership, a future. The Supreme Commander's mandibles clicked in confusion. You would show us mercy after everything we have done." His eyes were sad, but not angry, not hateful. "Mercy is not weakness," she said. "Revenge would not bring back my family. More death would not heal this galaxy. We have both lost enough. It is time to stop." The Supreme Commander reached out with a trembling claw and took her hand. Recorded the moment, the end of the Dominion, the birth of something new. 1 month later, he stood before the Galactic Concordat. The representatives of 1,000 civilizations filled the vast chamber. They had all come to hear his report, to learn what he had witnessed. Stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy. He was silent for a long moment, remembering everything: the march on New Thermopylae, the vigil, the battle, the mercy. Then he spoke. "I was sent to document the extinction of humanity. I have failed in that mission. Humanity did not go extinct. Instead, they defeated the greatest military power this galaxy has ever known. They freed 100 enslaved species. They ended a 10,000-year reign of terror, and they did it without becoming monsters themselves. He paused, looking out at the assembled representatives. I have witnessed the fall of empires. I have documented the death of species. I believed I understood war. I was wrong. Humanity does not fight like us. They do not calculate acceptable losses. They do not surrender when the mathematics demand it. They are illogical, irrational, and utterly terrifying, not because they do not fear death, but because they fear the wrong things more. They fear abandoning each other. They fear letting evil stand. They fear a universe where their children cannot be free. And so they fight, they sing, they weep, they burn. They march toward destruction and somehow impossibly make it blink first. The chamber was completely silent. Every being listened with full attention. They asked what humans are. I can now answer. They are the species that charges into darkness, hand in hand, singing as they go. They are the species that treats every life as precious, even the lives of their enemies. They are the species that refuses to accept the unacceptable, no matter the cost. And somehow, against all reason, they carry the light with them. Thought of, who had survived the war and returned home to hold her daughter. He thought of Captain Torres, who had died to save 3,000 strangers. He thought of the Marine on 4, burying an alien child he had never met. He thought of the fire that burned in every human heart. My recommendation to this Concordat is simple. Do not ever give humanity a reason to march against you, because I have seen what happens when they march together. I have heard them sing in the frozen dawn. I have watched them hold lines that could not be held. I have witnessed them show mercy to those who showed them none. He straightened, his perception organs bright with emotion. They are not the strongest species in this galaxy. They are not the most advanced, but they possess something we do not. A fire that does not die when it should. A defiance that logic cannot extinguish. A love so fierce that it makes them do impossible things. I witnessed humans march to battle, and now I understand why the galaxy dreads them. Not because of what they can destroy, but because of what they refuse to let die. He stepped back from the center of the chamber. His report was complete. The Concordat was silent for a long time. Then, slowly, one representative began to tap their appendage against their desk, a sign of respect in their culture. Others joined in. Different species, different sounds, but all meaning the same thing. Acknowledgement, understanding, perhaps even awe. Looked up at the vast chamber, filled with 1,000 species who had just heard the truth about humanity. He thought about the small blue world called Earth, spinning somewhere in the darkness. He thought about the billions of humans there, living their lives, loving each other, burning with that fire that never went out. He smiled. It was a strange expression on a face. His species was not built for such things. But he had learned it from the humans, and he thought it suited him.